нації!
Смерть Москва!
Україна!
Понад все!
Україна!
Понад все!
Україна!
Понад все!
Захисникам України тричі!
Слава!
Слава! Слава! Thank you very much for all of you who joined our rally today. Appreciate you guys got the time to came over here today. I know it's a busy week. It's after work Wednesday, but I appreciate every single one who made it for today's rally. Just a few announcements that before we continue. This rally, for those who knew, those rallies are here every Wednesday 6 to 8, Saturday 4 to 6, and Sunday 3 to 5. Every day, every week, 3 times a week. This rally going on to remind the world about the war, and the war in Ukraine is not over. Another announcement that we on 6th of August, so it's enough time for those who haven't signed and prepare. On 6th of August, there will be organized charitable freedom run at Battersea Park. This charity run to support many good causes, to support the many charities, and this will be on the 6th of August at Battersea Park. There is a half-a-day event. There is a run for all the abilities, all the age, for children, for adults. So it's going to be 6th of August at Battersea Park. There will be different distance runs, 21 kilometer, 10, 5, 2.5, and 1.5. Obviously the bottom two will be the charitable walk. It will start at 7 o'clock, so the opening will be at 7 o'clock. You have time to register, and then from then there will be different groups, different runs, and everything should be finished at around 1 o'clock. So the closing will be around 1 o'clock. So from 7 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock on the 6th of August. So it's today we celebrate the Saint Peter and Paula. So congratulations to the Peter and Paul who've got this name. We approaching the August when Ukraine would celebrate the day of the national flag, followed by the Independence Day in Ukraine. So 24th of August, and then 23rd of August will be the National Flag Day, and 24th of August will be Ukraine Independence Day. Followed by the 28th of August, the Day of the Nation Aviation. And I would like to, truly would like to believe that within months' time, we will be able to have a firm decision on the providing Ukraine the fighter jet. We'll be able to have the firm decision in support, and we'll be able to have the more good news and results from the front line on Ukraine. We will be talking today mainly about the major subject that we all been waiting for the last few weeks, and that we've been following over the last 2 days. It's Ukraine-NATO summit in Vilnius that's happening today. It's the second day of the Ukraine-NATO summit, and Ukraine subject was among the top subjects to discuss during this summit. For some of you, some might be a bit upset, some might come up with the positive results and are grateful for what's happening. So it's not always one opinion, but this summit of the NATO Ukraine, it just shows that Ukraine is still supported and Ukraine will be backed up by the NATO and the G7 until this necessary. So the strong message is that Ukraine will be supported and Ukraine will receive the support as long as it takes to win this war. There are slight hesitations. Like I said, there is mixed opinion, but message is strong. The democratic world is standing behind Ukraine. The democratic world is supporting and backing Ukraine against the terrorist Russian regime, against the aggression, against the dictatorship. And the message is strong that support will be there for Ukraine as long as it takes until Ukraine will be winning, until Ukraine will win this war. To conclude the two-day summit, and the joint statement in brief reads that all G7 leaders confirmed their unwavering commitment to the strategic goal of creating a free, independent, democratic, sovereign Ukraine within its international recognized borders, capable of defending itself and deterring the further aggression. This is a brief conclusion of the statement. During the long meeting, Joe Biden called Ukrainians incredible people. And Ukrainians are incredible people. They are defending Ukraine. They are defending the freedom, democracy of the Europe. And they now representing and backing the NATO against the aggression. Just to remind that the main goal of the NATO was to withhold, to stand against the aggression that now coming from Russia. Back then was the Soviet. So the main goal of the NATO when it was founded in 1949 was to defend the West and democratic world against the threat. And this threat is still on, far much larger than the threat when the NATO was founded in 1949. Russia, without any doubt, without any cover, they clearly, without any hiding, they terrorizing Ukraine. They acting as a terrorist. They continue to commit murder crimes in Ukraine. More than 500 days of the full-scale war in Ukraine. Yet, for those, some countries still to recognize that this is actually happening just around the corner in Ukraine, less than 2,000 miles away from here. For those still to recognize that Russia is a terrorist state, that Russia is terrorizing Ukraine and terrorizing the world, democratic world, they're terrorizing Europe. Russia is a terrorist state.
I have to head off to another rally.
Okay.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Shit on Instagram. Increase up.
Russia is a terrorist state. Russia is a terrorist state. Russia is a terrorist state. Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Because for Russia, if they stop fighting, there will be no war. If Ukraine stop fighting, there will be no Ukraine. And now it's even more obvious, not just the Ukraine, but the Western Europe, but the Europe itself under the threat. And Ukraine is proves and defends this freedom of the rest of the Europe. That's why Ukraine is not just fighting for own territory, for own independence, for own people. Ukraine is fighting for Europe. And not everyone still understands the threat coming from Russia. Not everyone still understands all the picture of the full-scale war that can any moment go further than Ukraine. When the NATO-Ukraine summit started yesterday, the Ukrainian president who attended the summit, he stated that he would like his faith in a strong NATO to become confident. He said, today I embark on the trip to Vilnius with a faith in decisions, with a faith in partners, with a faith in a strong NATO. In a NATO that does not hesitate, does not waste time, and does not look back at any aggressor. And I would like this phase to become confident in decisions that we deserve. All of us deserve, and every warrior, every citizen, every mother, every child expect. NATO will give Ukraine security, and Ukraine will make the alliance stronger. This is a core message that came from Ukraine, that Ukraine will benefit NATO more, that NATO will benefit Ukraine. Ukraine is already proved. Ukraine proved enough that Ukrainian army now is strongest army in Europe. When most of the European countries give up their weapon, when most of the European countries facing shortages of the staff, Ukraine armies became the strongest in Europe. Ukraine army is becoming strong, and this is a force to be accounted. This is a force that can make NATO even stronger. So the NATO will benefit from Ukraine's allies as much as Ukraine will benefit from joining NATO. There's been lots of strong messages today, lots of strong messages yesterday in support of Ukraine. Yet, Ukraine has not been given the dates, has not been given the firm assurances about joining NATO, other than stated that Ukraine will join NATO one day. We're grateful to every single nation, to every single country, political leaders, diplomats, ordinary people for their support to Ukraine. And they support until required, until this war is over. We're grateful to every single one, all of you individuals, for your continued support of Ukraine. Unfortunately, NATO is still hesitating. Unfortunately, while this hesitation taking place, Russia is using it for their advantage. Russia is using it to continue their threat, to continue to terrorize Ukraine and the democratic world. Russia continue fight, continue to destroy and murder and kill and torture everything on their way. Ukraine bid for NATO, it's not a fresh bid. This was long bid and aspiration to get Ukraine to the NATO. Yet it takes years and years and still no firm reassurances on the joining NATO. Ukraine future is NATO. This is the message we hear. And the alliance published a message stating that Ukraine's future is in the NATO. The message stated that we fully support Ukraine's right to choose its own security arrangements. Ukraine's future is in NATO. We reaffirm the commitment we made at 2008 summit in Bucharest that Ukraine will become the member of NATO. The process started from 2008. So it's been a long process. Yet, the statement stating that Ukraine has been closest to the NATO in all those years. Ukraine just needs the reassurance. Ukraine needs a date. No one have any illusions about Ukraine joining NATO when the war in Ukraine is going on. But NATO and the members of the NATO countries, all Ukraine has asked is to give the firm reassurances about Ukraine joining NATO, because only joining NATO will pull the Russia back, and only joining NATO will prevent this from happening in the future. All the historical facts show that countries who joined the NATO has not been invaded. Now, the NATO is 31 member countries and none of them has been invaded due to the policy of the NATO. Ukraine just asked for reassurances. I'm sure that one day we will become a 33rd member of the NATO, as stated, but this day will not come overnight. And we still have to deal with the enemy that in Ukraine. We still have to deal with the terrorist Russia. We still have to get this war over, and we have to push the aggressors away. We have to push the aggressors and secure Ukraine borders. But we understand all this perfectly. But what we asking is, when this day happens, is to have a strong reassurance saying, if we meet these conditions A, B, C, when Ukraine is joining NATO. Like I said, the Ukraine will benefit and will make NATO stronger. And Ukraine will have those reassurances by joining NATO. Reassurances that the country, like Russian terrorist regime and the Russian Federation, they will not be a threat anymore in the future. And the reassurance for that is to join the alliance, to join the NATO. NATO, for more than 15 years, the Putin has waged the war on NATO, directly and indirectly. And NATO is still asleep. When democratic Georgia sought NATO membership, Putin invaded Georgia. When Ukraine wanted to join the NATO and had a revolution of dignity in 2014, what happened to Ukraine? Where Russia seized Crimea and invaded east of Ukraine. Putin and his groups of terrorists, they bombed the hospitals in Syria on another border to NATO country. the courts across the world to destabilize, to undermine the democracy, to undermine the government. And they will continue to do that until the NATO will gain strength, will stop hesitating, and on Ukraine example back us, and will be able to tell who's in power. And the only way that Russia is understand is the power. If message would be strong today on Ukraine to join the NATO, this would definitely carve the way towards the end of this war, and they would put the Russia on the back foot. But for now, Ukraine is still need to win this war. And Ukraine will win this war with your help, with a friend's help, with our partners' help. Ukraine will win this war. But for now, we need continued support. We need more air defense. We need more tanks. We need fighter jets. All this that Ukraine been asking, and that's what makes this war more bloodier and takes so long. Ukraine need air defense. Air defense for Ukraine.
Air defense for Ukraine!
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 And Ukraine is asking. Ukraine has been asking for the air defense more. Ukraine is asking for the fighter jets because unfortunately Russia still got dominance in the sky. Unfortunately they and those who support them still sending their drones microchips and their ammunition and equipment to continue for Russia to dominate in the sky. Ukraine has been asking for the air superiority for a long time, and we're still yet waiting for this to happen. That's why I said, if we will have this present for Ukrainian Independence Days, this will change the tide of the war. But it's not happening yet, and the partners are saying that this will unlikely happen this year, which means that Ukraine is still relying on the current equipment that we have to continue this war, and hopefully to push the enemy meter by meter, blood by blood, drop by drop. But it's a very high price that Ukraine is paying, unbearable price, while the world is hesitating and still think what Russia would do for every action that West will make, for any decision that will happen. They still hesitating and thinking what would do Russia. And all we hear from them is just more and more threats. One of the statements from Russia we hear today recently is that stating that we one step closer to the nuclear war. The threat is greater. All they have left is to threaten the world. To threaten the world and to make sure that they are here. And there's still people and countries and government are still listening to the Russian regime. Stop listening to Russia. Help Ukraine, because by helping Ukraine you bring in this victory day closer. By helping Ukraine you helping Europe, you helping all democratic world to have this sorted to the logical conclusion towards the victory, towards Ukraine's victory and victory of the democracy in Europe and in the world. Stop Putin, stop the war.
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
Stop Putin, stop the war.
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
Stop Putin, stop the war.
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
Stop Putin, stop the war.
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
Stop Putin! Stop the war!
Ukraine's been asking for the fighter jets. Not tomorrow, not next year, but Ukraine's been asking for the fighter jets today. Now, fighter jets for Ukraine!
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 Fighter jets for Ukraine! Fighter jets for Ukraine!
Thank you.
Jets for Ukraine!
We're going to have a short break now. Please stay with us. Listen to the Ukrainian music. But important is continue your support. Do everything possible to restore the peace in Europe. Every possible way, little by little, bit by bit, it all works towards Ukraine and European victory against the terrorist regime, which now coming threat from the Russia. Thank you.
Слава Україні! Слава Україні! Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Нашим захисникам тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
First of all, I really want to thank everybody who is here today. Most of you are stood here 3 times a week at every protest that we have. So we're here protesting on Wednesdays, Saturdays and Sundays. And I just really want to say a huge thank you because you're really fighting a very, very important battle here today. Our fighters, our defenders are there defending Ukraine, defending its sovereignty. But you're also fighting a war here, and that's an information war. We all know that Russian propaganda works really well within the country, and they're really trying to sneak that propaganda through to the rest of the world. So what we are doing here is we're standing here, we're reminding the world that the war is not over. We're shouting about our pain and the atrocities that are happening in our country, in Ukraine. And we're here to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Because only this way can we fight the information and the propaganda and the lies that are being spread by Russia. Ukraine is stood as the shield of Europe right now. Again, we're defending the rest of Europe from missiles, from bombs, and so on. But we're also trying to be here and defend from lies and Russian influence. World, support Ukraine!
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 And you know, we're protesting here 3 times a week outside of 10 Downing Street. And sometimes there's counter-protesters who say that this is not our war, that the UK is not fighting the right war, that this is not their war, that this is the war of Ukraine. To which I want to say one thing. If Russia stopped bombing Ukraine, there would be no war. But if Ukraine stopped defending itself, there would be no Ukraine. Arm Ukraine now!
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 I think it's also important to clarify that when we say arm Ukraine, We're talking about defensive weapons. Ukraine has no imperialistic ambitions and never has. All we're doing here is trying to protect our land, which was completely unlawfully invaded by another state. So when we say arm Ukraine, we're talking about absolutely essential defensive weapons, which is the only way to stop this war. The only way to stop the war is to arm Ukraine, and the only way to stop Putin is also by arming Ukraine. Stop Putin, stop the war!
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 Another message that we always try and pass during our protests and share with everybody is that Russia is a terrorist state, and I really want to explain why that is. I mean, maybe it's obvious, but maybe to some people who don't know the situation, it's not obvious why. Russia, on a daily basis, is attacking civilian buildings. We've seen it time and time again, and sometimes people are surprised. Really? Civilian buildings are really attacking them? Yes, they are. People in Ukraine are dying every day. And not only are they attacking civilian buildings, apartment blocks where regular people, like everyone here, live, they're also attacking civilian infrastructure. And that is another clear sign of terrorism. There is absolutely no point of attacking civilian infrastructure such as electric power plants or dams like the Kakhovka Dam. You know, we've all seen the absolute environmental catastrophe and human catastrophe and everything that was. There's no other reason to do this but to terrorize people, but to make people scared, make people say, oh, well, maybe we should, just give in and the war is going to be over and it will all be fine. But we're not going to do that, because we recognize that Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state! Russia is a terrorist state! Russia
Is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state!
It's a very strong message, and we're never going to get tired of shouting this message that Russia is a terrorist state. And sometimes feel like it's not long enough. I could stand here for an hour and just shout that, and I'll be very happy.
You'll be right every single time.
Exactly, and I will be right every single time. I want to come back to the thing that I said earlier about how I've heard it before, oh, well, maybe if you just give those territories to Russia, the war is going to be over. West of Ukraine, central Ukraine will be left alone. Let's just give them Donetsk. Let's just give them Luhansk. Let's just give them Crimea. That is absolutely impossible. We will not be doing that, and we will be standing until all the occupied territories and all the borders from 1991 are returned back as part of Ukraine. They're still part of Ukraine. They're always part of Ukraine. They're currently unlawfully occupied by a different state. World, support Ukraine!
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 World support Ukraine!
World, support Ukraine!
World support Ukraine!
World, support Ukraine!
World support Ukraine!
World, support Ukraine!
For the Londoners, for the guests, for the passerbys, we have the blue market on the end. Please stand by, please just spend a minute down there, see what Ukrainian literature, what Ukrainian attribute you can purchase. Any single donation will go towards victory in Ukraine, towards the good cause, towards numerous charitable programs, towards the numerous requests from the hospitals, from the orphanages, from the front lines, from our brave soldiers, from the veterans. So every single pound here makes a massive difference in Ukraine. Remember, we're here every Wednesday 6 to 8, Saturday 4 to 6, Sunday 3 to 5, and don't forget there will be a charitable run at Battersea Park on the 6th of August. Inside the Battersea Park, again, all the money will go towards the veterans, towards the helping those in need in Ukraine. So please choose where you yourself can help Ukraine, where you can support Ukraine. By helping Ukraine, you helping the Europe to deal with this cancer that currently called the Russian terrorism that invaded Ukraine, and believe me, it will not stop unless Ukraine and your help and our friends will stop it right where they are at the moment. Stop Russia! Stop the war!
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 Russia is a terrorist state!
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 They are terrorists. Even today, when the second day of the summit in Vilnius is underway, the Russia bombed another Ukrainian cities. Children, 6 children injured, many more adults injured by one of the Russian rocket hit the town square in Zaporizhia. This happening today, just a couple of hours ago. This is everyday threat that Russia posing in Ukraine. Civilians, they fighting with civilians. They fighting and killing Ukrainian civilians, children, women. Them rockets, I have no sense of direction. They just aim to destroy everything on their way. They aim to destroy Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian nation, and Ukraine as a country. This is their agenda, to have the Ukraine controlled by they oligarchs, by they clan, by they imperialistic minority who in charge currently in the Russian terrorist country. Heroям Slava! To conclude with the summit NATO over the last 2 days, there were many good points as well as a few points that we would like to be a bit better. On the good notes, G7 agreed on the declaration on the long-term security guarantees for Ukraine, and we're grateful for that. Main security guarantees including the assistance to Ukraine in protection and prevention of the new aggression, to continuous supply of the weapon, military defense support, training, cooperation in the field, in intelligence, in cybersecurity against the aggression, assisting in improving stability of the economy, energy, providing technical, financial assistance to Ukraine, consultations, immediate consultations in event of the new aggression, support in bringing the Russian Federation and those who commit crimes to the justice. And steps of the economic, legal nature aim to punish those who causing Ukraine, threat to Ukraine and the world democratic world. These are good points that have been discussed. But before the next summit 2024, Ukraine must win the war and to sign the security guarantees. That's why we're saying that continuous support must. The continuous support to Ukraine should not fade away. It should only become stronger, with more countries becoming united by backing Ukraine. Because remember, by protecting Ukraine, you protect the peers in Europe. By protecting Ukraine, you protecting democracy. By protecting Ukraine, you're protecting the West and every country in European Union. You're protecting not just Ukraine by helping Ukraine. Ukraine has not asked to go and die for Ukraine. Ukraine simply asking to help to win this war against this terrorist regime. Ukraine is not asking for the weapon to tackle Russia in Russian territory. As Valeria mentioned, Ukraine is asking simply for the weapon, air supply, air defense, fighter jet to be able to spar with Russia and to be able to push them back. At the moment, Russia and those few supporting this terrorist regime are strong. But together we can make the enemy weaker, and together we can push them back to where they came from. And what's more important is to secure the borders and prevent this happening in the future. Stop Russia, protect Europe.
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 Stop Russia, protect Europe. Stop Russia, protect Europe.
Filming.
Yeah,
We
Okay.
have
Yeah,
Thomas
okay,
here. He wants to say a few words in support. Please welcome.
Slava Ukraini!
Slava!
Hi, I'm Thomas. I've been coming to the protest since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Before that, way back in 2013-14, I stood on Maidan during the Revolution of Dignity. I just wanted to start by thanking everybody here that keeps coming to the protest every week to listen, but more importantly to chant. I've many friends in Ukraine. I lived there for over 3 years. My friends are always grateful when they see these protests on social media. It gives them a lot of strength and it gives them a lot of determination too. Also, we should remember where we're stood here. So we're stood in a very important place. So this is the centre of British power, where policy is made and decisions are taken. So behind us, we've got the Ministry of Defence. In front of us, we've got the Cabinet. Over there, we've got number 10 Downing Street. Over there, we've got the Treasury. We are in an important place, and that's why it's important to come here 3 times a week and shout against this injustice, to shout against this illegal invasion, to shout against the war crimes that Russia are committing. So anyway, to what I wanted to say, there was a lot said, a lot of positive said about the NATO conference. I'm going to put a bit of realism on that. I think it could have been better, and it reminds me of 2008. So in 2008, NATO welcomed Ukraine and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations for membership in NATO. What did it mean? Not a great deal, unfortunately. As the former United States ambassador to NATO, Kurt Volker, said, we left Ukraine in a grey zone, and grey zones provide green lights. So what happened at the NATO conference? Jens Stoltenberg said Ukraine was now closer to NATO than ever before, while Sunak insisted it was clear from today's summit that people's view is Ukraine will and should be a NATO member. That doesn't give me any certainty. What I want is certainty. Ukraine needs security guarantees. And we saw with the Budapest Memorandum that wasn't honoured. Ukraine's in the position where it's once bitten, twice shy. It needs concrete guarantees that it will get protection, and the only way for me is NATO. A country in the grey zone like Ukraine was considered by Vladimir Putin as green light. He invaded Georgia in 2008. He annexed Crimea and parts of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast in 2014. He launched the full-scale invasion in 2022. Grey zones are green lights, and the world needs to learn the lesson from that. I feel almost listening to politicians from Germany and the United States. They've done a lot of good, of course, they support, but they seem to be reluctant to make a decision. They have to make that decision, because otherwise it will just be ongoing. And that is so that Russia doesn't terrorize any other countries ever again. On that note, let's do a chant. I've got a little bit more to say, but let's say, stop Russia, stop the war, 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 Russia, stop the war, stop Russia, stop the war. Sorry to mention the name. I don't like saying his name a lot, and it's Vladimir Putin, or Putin. Putin, if we want to understand Putin, as well as many Russian people, have an obsession that goes back to 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall, when their world came crashing down. Everything they stood for fell apart. And ever since that moment, he's wanted to reinstate and resurrect this world, the Soviet Empire or the Russian Empire. What's clear is that Ukraine choosing neutrality would not protect it from any kind of Russian aggression. And the bottom line is that Ukraine needs proper security guarantees. Ukraine's security is not just in Ukraine's interests, but in the interests of Europe and the world. And Western leaders in particular shouldn't be avoiding this issue. Zaluzhny, I hope a person that we all respect, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, has said that for successful progress on the front, Ukraine needs more types of weapons, significantly more shells, and of course F-16 fighters to have air superiority. It's almost like Ukraine's fighting the Goliath with one hand tied behind its back. That shouldn't be the case. To quote Zaluzhny, he said, the number of aircraft that are on duty near our western borders is twice as much as the number of Russian aircraft devastating our positions. Why can't we take at least a third of it there and move it here? So I'm going to say F-16s for Ukraine.
F-16s for Ukraine. F-16s for Ukraine. F-16s for Ukraine. F-16s for Ukraine. F-16s for Ukraine.
And finally, I think it's not just about NATO, it's not just about security and feeling safe, it's about economic security as well. And I think Ukraine has really shown you know, what's important to the rest of Western civilization. It fought for those rights, it stood up for those rights, and it's about time that is recognised. It's important that they get recognition, so when we shout about NATO, we should be shouting about EU as well. So my final chant is, I will say, NATO stronger with Ukraine. You will say, EU stronger with Ukraine. Let's try that. NATO stronger with Ukraine.
NATO stronger with Ukraine.
EU stronger with Ukraine.
EU stronger with Ukraine.
I say NATO stronger with Ukraine.
NATO stronger with Ukraine.
EU stronger with Ukraine.
EU stronger with Ukraine.
Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава! Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Нашим славним захисникам і захисницям тричі!
Slava! 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 Thank you, Grace Peter. I was coming towards that, but yeah, you concluded that NATO summit, Ukraine-NATO, wasn't all good, and there was many things they could have done, but they were not done over those 2 days in the NATO summit. And one of them was that Ukraine has been given the what is called the MAP, which is the annual review sort of direction list that will technically supposed to bring Ukraine closer to the NATO, and that will be reviewed every year, step by step. The thing is, it's almost impossible, and it's very vague what needs to be achieved, but it's almost impossible to achieve. And the list is kind of endless, and it could be rewritten, so it could be something added or omitted, which is, again, it doesn't give Ukraine strong guarantees when Ukraine will become the part of the NATO. And it's been said, NATO will be stronger with Ukraine, Europe will be stronger with Ukraine, and Ukraine already proved that the future of Ukraine is within Europe. Ukraine will become the part of the European Union, part of the NATO. We are technically there. We just need the formalities and guarantees to be recognized and become officially a member of the European Union and the NATO. This is what would be to bring the us to the one step closer towards restoring this peace, not to become the NATO member and European Union member after Ukraine fight away towards our victory, but to show the unity of the NATO, to show the unity of the G7 leader, and to say that we are strongly with Ukraine. Ukraine is one of us on the level, and we will fight for Ukraine. We will help Ukraine until this day of victory. There were lack of strong messages over the last 2 days to confirming the date secured for NATO, for Ukraine to be a NATO member. So this is what Thomas said now, and this is what unfortunately did not happen over the last 2 days. But all we had is just Ukraine to demonstrate the progress of implementations of the list to be achieved before Ukraine can actually become the NATO member. All this additional denies the statement that the map for Ukraine was concealed, equating the Ukraine pass with the Finnish and Swedish one. This is not true. The official Kyiv in alias must make the maximum effort to convince NATO for next year to abandon the current multi-year structure and turn it into the limited and specific list of the efforts that Ukraine must meet and achieve. Specific, not blurry items on the pages of pages that Ukraine will have to head towards, but specific list what need for Ukraine to join the alliance. And this will be the strongest message to Putin and this terrorist regime, saying that Ukraine is on the strong path, on the speed lane towards joining the Union, towards joining the NATO. Thank you. By joining NATO, NATO will benefit from Ukraine. By joining NATO, Europe will benefit from Ukraine. This is a strong message. This is what Russia is constantly trying to rewrite. This is what Russia is constantly opposing, terrorizing and threatening. All we hear from them over the last few days is we are a step closer to the nuclear disaster. We are a step closer to another war. We are a step closer. We already here. We already, the Russians already done enough and beyond repair damage to the Ukraine. The Russian threat is already there. And all we need is to stop to be afraid of the Russia. All we need is to go shoulder by shoulder, hands to hands, cold brain with a hot blood, hot hearts, and to back Ukraine, to support Ukraine towards this victory. Because only together, in unity, without hesitation, the Russia will be able to withdraw. They will be forced to withdraw from Ukraine. And then Ukraine will restore our borders, restore our peace, to liberate all the territories temporarily annexed by the Russian regime, and to restore the European peace and bring the justice to those who need it the most. Stop Russia! Stop the war!
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 Stop genocide in Ukraine!
Stop the 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 ecocide 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 in Ukraine!
This is not a reality show. This is a war, and this war is on our doorstep. And this is a war started not by Ukraine, not by NATO. The war started by the Russian terrorist regime. NATO did not invade Ukraine. NATO did not came to kill Ukrainians. NATO is not blowing Ukrainian cities. NATO is not destroying, murdering, killing civilians. Russia does. Russian terrorist regime and the like. Those who support and supply the Russia with all these dual-use items, who trade with Russia, who still having businesses with Russia, who buy from Russia, they are responsible and guilty for all this terrorism that Russia is causing in Ukraine. It's not NATO against the Russia. It's Russia fighting in Ukraine and destroying everything on their path. Do not
No trade with Russia.
trade with Russia.
No 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 trade with Russia.
Total embargo on 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 Russia. Russia is a terrorist state.
We're going to have another musical break, short break. Stay with us. Україні! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Захисникам України тричі! Слава! 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 Glory to Ukrainian heroes! Glory! 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 They are heroes, and every single one there now who defending Ukraine with true heart, standing against the enemy every day. Snow, rain, sun, day, night, every single one is bringing our victory, bringing Ukraine's victory a day closer. And I would like you all just to bow your heads and have a minute of silence towards all those defenders who defending tirelessly for the last 500 plus days, for the last 9 years and before, who lost their lives, who lost their loved ones, defending Ukraine, and most importantly, they lost their life for they believe in the true Ukraine, democratic Ukraine, free from this aggression, free from this cancer that coming from the east with the name Russia, with the name Russian terrorist regime. So please have a minute of silence above your head for those fallen for the freedom of Ukraine. Thank you very much. By helping Ukraine, you're helping the entire democratic Europe. So don't lose your faith in Ukraine. Do not follow the Russian propaganda, which is strong. And when they're losing at the battlefield, they invest in heavy in their propaganda. Because they either buying the votes, they buying the voices, or they threatening and scared to obtain those voices. There's a two-way they dealing. They either using their dirty money or the threats to convince everyone. So do not be fool of the Russian propaganda. Seek true information, true source. Join these rallies. Help Ukrainian, help to any way possible. Just a quick reminder that Israeli here every Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday. Wednesday 6 to 8, Saturday 4 to 6, Sunday 3 to 5. There will be another charitable event that we will be notifying you in due course. There is another charity run that happening on the 6th of August. Any way possible, please don't be silent. Speak out, talk to your colleagues, support Ukraine, volunteer, donate, share information, join these rallies. There are lots of ways that we can all support and help and bring the victory in Ukraine day closer. Back to the last summit, Ukraine is not asking for immediate membership. It's not asking for the membership today, but it's asking for virtue of all the blood it has shed and the benefits it offers to the NATO. For membership in the future after Ukraine forces have liberated their lands and people. It is the same situation that NATO already faces. It's nothing new. Russia already borders the Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Norway, Finland. Now we have Sweden. It's nothing new. Ukraine already have the NATO countries next to that. So by allowing Ukraine to join the NATO, there will be no more threat. This is just no more than Russian propaganda who trying to convince everyone saying that they will have to make more actions. They have to threaten us with the nuclear, they threaten us with another Armageddon heading towards us. This is no different. Ukraine joining NATO will benefit NATO as much as NATO will benefit Ukraine. So there is nothing new. Our neighbors already members of the NATO. So don't be fooled by the Russian propaganda and what they say. Because all they have is just to say those threatened wars towards us, just have more and more hesitation to back off. Because any hesitation just gives Russia green lights to commit more crimes, to cause more genocide, to bombard more Ukrainian cities, kill more children, rape more women in Ukraine, and continue this war for longer by taking more territories, and they will not stop. We have to stop this threat, this terrorist regime with their thick ambitions and imperialistic ambitions to restore what's back then called the Russian Empire. This is not going to happen. And the future of Ukraine is a democracy, it's a Europe, it's a NATO. Same as Russia we know it today, it's doomed, it's facing the last breath. And there are many countries, the nations, they're waiting for opportunity to break through from this terrorist regime. And they will. And we will help this to happen. And everything depended on the victory of Ukraine. Because while everyone's watching, this is the most important. The victory of Ukraine will pave the path for those in despair for independence in Russia, for those who are suffering from their regime for decades, to become independent and to move forward, not to be stuck in the past, not to be stuck in this imperialistic sick regime, but to move forward, to develop for the future of the kids, for their own future, and move forward rather to be stuck in the past. By helping Ukraine, you helping not just to Ukraine, but those who threatened by the Russia, those who temporarily absorbed by their regime. You not just help in Ukraine, you help in Europe, you help in those countries. Help Ukraine protect peace.
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 Help Ukraine protect peace. Remember, it's innocent Ukrainians who died. It's Ukrainian soldiers who died. We're not asking to go and fight for Ukraine. Ukraine is not asking to go and die for Ukraine. Ukraine is asking for help and support to be able to win this war. Ukraine is asking for air defense. Ukraine is asking for the fighter jets. Ukraine is asking for the tanks, but simply to protect and defend our territory, to liberate our temporarily occupied cities, and to restore the peace in Ukraine. This is what Ukraine is fighting for and asking for your continuous support to be able to liberate the rest of the Ukrainian temporarily occupied territories. Yes, they've been occupied since 2014, but these territories never been recognized by any European government, never been recognized by civilized world, and these territories are forced annexed by the Russian regime, by the terrorist regime. Only liberating the rest of the territories we can restore the peace in Ukraine. But we need your continued support. So stay with Ukraine, seek true source, seek true information. Do not listen to the propaganda, and don't be fooled by the Russian threats, Russian propaganda. Continue your support to Ukraine. The latest Wagner march on Moscow, it just showed that to the entire world that their so-called emperor has no clothes. We all know about this story, yeah? When the decisive moment came, Putin blinked, and most of them ran away for their safety from Moscow. He was humiliated. He immediately made concessions in order to maintain his total grip on power and to keep the money flowing, because that's what he's going to do. Prigozhin left free and is now away. And it turns out that when facing defeat, Putin can be pragmatic. That march on Moscow also showed that Russia has no loyalists left, that Putin has no loyalists left. The Russian soldiers were not willing to stop the Prigozhin, and they were not definitely willing to die under the bullets for the so-called emperor. So why would they obey the suicidal order from Kremlin, who everyone's expecting can begin the nuclear Armageddon? These are just the threats from day end. So don't be fooled. We standing with Ukraine, and Ukraine will be with NATO. And NATO will benefit from Ukraine, because Ukraine is the only army in Europe who actually fought what they said the second largest army in the world. And Ukraine now how to deal with the aggressor the aggression that coming from the Russia. So the NATO will benefit. Technically, Ukraine is already in NATO. Ukraine is fighting with the Western armor. Yes, it's a surplus armor that was going to be utilized. But this is a Western armor. This is a Western ammunition, Western tanks, Western air defense system. Ukraine is already in NATO, just a formality, and Ukraine was asking for this formality that didn't happen last night. But we will. With your help, with the help of our friends, Ukraine will become the 33rd member of the NATO. Слава Україні! Слава! Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Захисникам України тричі! Слава! 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 Glory to Ukrainian heroes!
Glory! Glory! Glory!
We all hear about the Garry Kasparov, the chess player. I'm just only going to mention it briefly, but yes, he's Russian. But he, as only a handful of Russians who oppose this terroristic regime, don't have to mention that at least 2/3 of Russians supporting what currently happening in Ukraine. It doesn't mean they want to fight in Ukraine. That means they led to this to happen, and they supporting what happening in Ukraine, and they supporting this terrorist regime. So the world chess champion Kasparov has been for years opposing the terrorist regime, the Putin regime, and he's been not afraid to speak out. Before this NATO summit, he mentioned and stated that Ukraine victory is mandatory for Russia to move away from Putin fascism. And that's true, because it's Putin fascism. That's the only way to move away and to see the new Russia, to see the peace in Ukraine and democracy in Europe restored by Ukraine to win. There is no other way. You can't sit down on the table and discuss with aggressor who already took part of your apartment or home, who already sitting in your living room, and you're asking him, you know what, maybe I'll give you half of the living room. How about we talk about the peace, yeah? You take half of my living room, I'll be probably in a corner here, taking another half. It's impossible. We can't even imagine that. So what's the point to talk if every possible talk going back to their conditions, stating we're gonna stay in Ukraine, we got 1/5 of Ukraine, we're gonna stay in Ukraine, but let's talk about the peace. We're going nowhere. That's ours. Because they annexed it by force. You won't do it to the enemy in your home. And that's why Ukraine is not going or willing to do and discuss with this regime, with Putin, these conditions where he's not willing to withdraw and pull back from Ukraine. Because every time there were more and more conditions. Remember from history, Ukraine did not aim for NATO, and we agreed to be the neutral state. Yet it did not stop Russia to invade Ukraine. 24th of February 2022, Russia aggression went into Ukraine with the hope to get Ukraine in 2-3 days. Ukraine was not in the NATO. Ukraine is not part of EU. Yet it did not stop the Russia. So why did those who still support Russia think that they will stop if Ukraine will give up that 1/5 of the territory, that rightly so Ukrainian. This will not happen. This will just pause the conflict, this war, for a few years, if not less. This will allow Russia to come up with a new plan and move on and take more until they will be stopped again. And they will not stop simply in Ukraine. They will go further because their imperialistic ambitions are not stopping in Ukraine. Their ambitions over the Poland, Moldova, Bulgaria, Baltic states, and always they had those ambitions. So they will not stop in Ukraine. They will just tease the rest of the world and wait for another green light to take more. And that's why Ukraine fighting to prevent this from happening. And that's why we should not give up, and we will not give up to support Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian front lines, many volunteering groups who tirelessly working to help those to bring this victory and push this cancer. Stand with Ukraine!
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 Kasparov mentioned, and I'm gonna just cite it what he said, that, by the way, he's a official Russian and Putin critic, and he's actually writing books. Most of them are about the chess strategies and stuff, but he's also doing political reviews on what currently happening in their poisonous state. And one of them is saying, I'm just going to cite it briefly, that Russia is a fascist dictatorship. We can talk about the restoration of this when it is over. As it is today, the Russia is compared to the Nazi Germany. However, it has been transformed into something else. Now, because you could not imagine, for example, Göring and Himmler fighting for power and Hitler saying, let's see who wins. So even the dictatorship in Russia is fake, like everything else in this state. I'm gonna say again, to change the regime in Russia will come with the victory of Ukraine. And we all to help for this to happen. Don't forget that Ukraine pays huge price for every day we can go on with our lives here. We're facing a bit of financial difficulties. We're facing hardship. But this is nothing to compare to what happening at the moment in Ukraine. There is no safe place in Ukraine because the recent news shows that whether you're south, east, west, north, central Ukraine, the Russia is still terrorizing all the cities. The Russia still poses threat, bombing civilian, bombing critical infrastructure. Every day, more and more lives lost. Ukrainian lives lost. The lives lost, innocent lives, the children, the young teenagers, those who see just a little and they had so many ambitions, so many plans for their future, and those plans were taken away from them in a most brutal form, in the form of the explosions, bombing. So the price that Europe is paying to stay safe and not to be involved directly with this war, Ukraine paid ultimate price. The price with our life, the price with our health, the price with our children, with our land, our homes. And we want to call this home, not a desert. So we need you to stay with Ukraine. And what's more important is to help Ukraine now to be able to win this war today, this year, not in the 10 years that what Russia is aiming. Because Russia will have no sympathy and they will turn Ukraine into the desert unless we all stand by, shoulder to shoulder, show the strength of the NATO, show the strength of the Europe, show the strength and our support for Ukraine now, with everything possible to win this war over this threat. Thank you very much. I'm gonna give the microphone to our friend Garth, who stood with us here for all this time.
Our Ukrainian. Just a small message before the end, just to give a message of hope really. Something which happened to me this week. Went with some colleagues from Support Ukraine to a meeting which was addressed by the mayor of Mariupol, the legitimate mayor of Mariupol, I would say. Mayor of Mariupol is here in London this week with his deputy, and we are one stage on a big European tour where the mayor of Mariupol is going around Europe talking about reconstruction projects. Has been in France dealing with architectural companies. There is a project in place called Mariupol Reborn, and I was privileged enough to see the video, and I have put it out on social media. So just to let people know that even in darkness, and goodness knows you think Mariupol has been such a tragic city during the war. Even there, and even behind the scenes in Mariupol, things are happening for the future to make Ukraine a better place when the war is won. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Another quick announcement. You see this lady here, Anna. She stood here every single time with us. She is fundraising as well, as many of people around here. She collects all the mobile phones, gadgets. She will tell you a few words as well. Please welcome her, but most importantly, if you have any unused gadgets, please speak to Anna after that. She will give you all the information. Most of the gadgets get repaired, restored, and they used by Ukrainian children who lack of everything now because their homes been destroyed and bombed. The gadgets, they help them to study. The gadgets that help them to communicate with their friends, with their teachers, with their relatives. So please, if you have anything to donate to Anna, she will be more than happy. So if you come here and you don't see the Anna for any reason, please speak to any of the volunteers here, and you can bring your old gadgets, and they will be handed over to Anna. Thank you very much. One more thing. On 22nd of July, in the Ukrainian club at Fulham, at Bigley Lane, there will be another charitable event started at 5 o'clock. So if you have a spare time, it's a Saturday at 5 o'clock. So if you come by, or if you have a spare time, visit Ukrainian hub at Bigley Lane at Fulham and attend these charitable events. There will be more information towards the date, so obviously we'll be talking here through over the next couple of days with more information and more details. But just remember those dates. The 22nd of July at the Ukrainian hub at Fulham. And also don't forget that we are here every Wednesday 6 to 8, every Saturday 4 to 6, Sunday 3 to 5. There will be charity run at Battersea Park on the 6th of August as well. backed by Ukrainian embassy for the good cause, and that will be run by the group of volunteers, and money will go towards the Our Veterans charity, towards the numerous charities as well. So as you see, there is many ways that you can help in any way possible. There are many ways to support, to volunteer, to donate, to speak out the truth about what happened in Ukraine. And anything possible will bring us towards this victory. Worst thing could have happened is for us to carry on with our daily lives and do nothing. And that's exactly what Russia is expecting, is for the rest of the world to do nothing and let them to invade and murder and kill and destroy everything on their path. Are we going to do nothing? Are we going to help? I'm sure we will. Like I said, everything helps towards the victory. One bit by bit, pound by pound, word for word, it helps to restore the peace and victory. Thank you very much. This rally is coming to the end today. I thank you all for joining today. Thank you all for being with us today and every day, every week here. You're doing a great job, and most importantly, you're supporting the right, you're supporting the light, you're supporting Ukraine. And thank you all, individuals, government, organizations, volunteers, every single one. Thank you very much. You are legend, you are stars, you are the best. Thank you very much. We're going to have a national anthem now. Thank you. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Захисникам України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Glory to Ukrainian heroes!
Glory! Glory! Glory!
Thank you very much, and God bless you all.